Hi, welcome to another one-to-one, water cooler chat. I'm the host, Steve Wright, and you're joining me here, or I'm going live on my Facebook group, The Managers Who Lead, as well as in this LinkedIn space. Clocks went back for us, so it's a bit earlier for me. It is my 3:30 rather than 4:30, but I guess I kept the US Eastern time the same, 11:30 Eastern, and hope to get a few people coming on to join me today. Just it's a strange one. It's going to be a strange one today. I've got things on my heart, things on my mind, things that have been going through the last, I guess, 48 hours with uh, the um, the hurricane Melissa passing through the Caribbean, becoming a Category 5, the largest hurricane in the Caribbean and the largest one to hit Jamaica since records started back in the late 1800s, which is absolutely crazy. There have been hurricanes that have hit before. Gilbert was probably the one of most recent memory in 1988 that went across the island from east to west. Melissa traversed the island from south to north, and Category 5 meant that even before it hit land, it was already causing major problems. So my prayers and continued thoughts go out to those that are impacted by it. My mum's um, town was on the path of the hurricane as it was making its way sort of south of Jamaica, and then it was going to turn north and northeast, which meant it was in a direct path for St. Anne and um, my mum's town in St. Anne. So it was definitely difficult to kind of just watch it do its thing. I'm looking for hourly updates. Mr. Whiskey's joining me here. Mr. Whiskey.
Hold on a second, Steve, right? I can't hear anything.
Well,
Did not set up my restream ahead of time. Give me
all right.
one second.
Well,
Oh,
I
no,
hope
I hear you
people.
now.
Okay, good. I hope people are listening, are hearing me okay as well. How are you, buddy?
You know what, Mr. Wright, Steve, Coach Wright, I am doing it's been a heavy morning. I just posted on my Instagram and YouTube a clip from my episode today, which was about the truth about drugs in prison. Really blew my
Mm,
mind, and we can get into that. But the guest, he shared why he quit drugs. He came home, found his wife dead in the closet. She had hung herself, and he cut her down, performed CPR, and brought her back to life. But because she had crushed the arteries in her neck, the blood went up, and then it could not come back down, and it killed her, and she died a second time. So he saved her just for her to pass away again. And obviously, I work in this field every day. I have conversations like this, but posting this morning, it was just the reflection point for me, as I mentioned in the caption, was just that there are so many people I know who would have experienced something like that and continued to use drugs. They have
mm,
seemingly no rock bottom. I've seen people do drugs until it took their life.
mm.
I've had family members overdose continually until they passed away, even while pregnant, killing both their child and themselves. And I've just never understood it. I work in addiction recovery, and I've gotten deep insights into the mindsets behind it, but I don't know, I just don't get it. Even with coffee, I did a caffeine addiction episode coming out soon, brilliant insights,
Mm.
and I said I've never, gotten into caffeine dependency because I would never wanna be dependent on something. I don't understand why anyone would ever wanna be dependent on something. We're all seeking, especially societally, independence, self-sovereignty. So why would you compromise that with your own choices? Also, spooky, merch on a side note. And I did wanna check on your family, Steve. I couldn't remember if you had family in Jamaica, but
Yeah,
they are getting destroyed right now from what I saw,
yeah,
Category 5, correct? Or
yeah.
you got your people are safe?
From what I heard, yes, yeah, it's been a roller coaster 24, 30 hours or so just watching this thing develop on the south. Like I
Yeah.
was just saying before you joined, on the south side of Jamaica, and then turning up north and eastward, and it was on trajectory for my mum's parish where she lived.
Mm.
And I was fortunate enough to be in touch with her. WhatsApp was, mobile was still
Right.
up until actually it had touched land further west than it had been predicted, which was further away from where she was.
Oh, okay.
It caused devastation wherever it hit, and pretty much if you look at the satellite pictures, the whole of the island was
Mm.
was was really susceptible to the winds, and then the storm surges
Yeah.
on the coast didn't make it any easier.
The
But
hurricane must have not known that you're coming to Jamaica soon, and everything's supposed to be prim and proper and ready for Steve Wright's arrival, and this hurricane is kind of messing up your
well, that
vacation plans.
you're, you're ma- yeah, you're bringing some levity to a very a very difficult situation, but yes, I mean,
Yeah, I don't want your
I
vacation
hope.
plans to be ruined. I was thinking I go on my podcasters cruise this weekend, and I was like, "It's gonna be some rough seas out there," and, I don't want all these drunk, middle-aged, beautiful women stumbling onto me in the middle of the P-way and when I'm walking down the ship, Steve. It's a bit of a task.
It's
You know, I've
difficult.
I've
It's
I've
difficult.
I've had it before where, drunk middle-aged women anchor on either side of me because I got my sea legs. I'm a Navy sailor, US Navy sailor. They think I'm a SEAL because they're drunk. Anyway, they think I'm a Navy SEAL, so they anchor on either side, and then, they're spilling their drink all over the ship and then gets on
Uh,
my suit. I mean,
that's tough.
these are first world problems, if
It's a
anything, but
definitely first world problems.
yeah.
What do sea legs look like? Hey, Paul's got his arms out again this week. What's up
I
with
know, I was just thinking that I was about to comment, Steve, and you beat me to it. Paul's going through a midlife crisis maybe.
It's
He's
good.
like
Ah.
gotta no, no.
Hey, if you got it, flaunt it.
Paul's not in the right mind, respectfully, because it is freezing out. I don't know about Florida, but right here in Georgia, it is misting and cold, and it is just like winter here. And I assume Florida's the same. Paul might have to turn the camera around and show the skies. You're gonna see snowflakes coming down.
Well,
Mm,
no, it's actually really nice outside. So my tank top and shorts weather is like coming to an end. So today was kind of like one of those days where it it's kind of honestly like perfect weather. Like the sun's out, but it's like it's not hot, but it's not really cold. It's kind of like the
Mhm.
perfect
mm,
weather. So
Yeah,
that's why I
nice.
decided to go with the tank top and shorts
yeah.
because I'm gonna have to switch them out for jackets and hoodies probably in the next like couple weeks.
Yeah.
Well, what you're
When do your clocks
describing
change? Oh, go on. I
I
was
was
going
just
to
gonna
ask when.
say, Paul is describing the ideal weather to take a stroll outside, maybe go hiking, listening to one of your favorite podcasts, perhaps the One to One Thing podcast with Steve Wright. I think that's the kind of weather he's describing. And when he
I,
talks about the jackets and hoodies, make sure you get your One to One Thing hoodies, limited edition available now. Before they go
I'm
out, they're
very
actually on
limited.
the Black Friday sale. Steve decided to start the Black Friday sale ahead of time
Yeah,
just
not
so
because I'm black.
everyone
Is that because
no, 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 no.
I'm
Black Friday as in the holiday, nothing to do with Mr. Wright's beautiful chocolate skin. It has nothing to do with
That's
it.
cool. No, yeah,
Oh dear.
yeah, the weather's been it's kind of like switching sort of, but yeah, it's actually been pretty cold the past couple days, so I was like
Mm,
I had to wear a hoodie yesterday, so I was like, well, it's not
Mm,
too bad.
yeah.
So I was like, why not wear my tank top while I can?
yeah.
Paul, feel free to use my line. People will say, "What's the weather like by you?" I say, "Well, the weather. I like my weather like my ex-girlfriend's bipolar." And then what that means is the weather is just constantly changing. One day it's freezing cold, the next day it's hot. One day the weather loves you, the next day it doesn't. Sometimes it's a raging storm out of nowhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's fun.
you have to be careful with that comment. You might end up attracting some bipolar people. Be like,
Some
oh,
category 5.
So
Yeah,
category,
yeah.
um,
yeah.
Steve, I did want to ask you because I know Hurricane Melissa hit
Yeah.
Jamaica yesterday. How is your mom doing?
Yeah, thank you for asking. She's well. She's well.
Oh,
I was able to speak to her up until about 9 p.m. my time, which was mid-afternoon. By that time, the uh the hurricane had sort of taken a turn further west of the island, which is she's
oh,
more
good.
central, so it was further away from her, which meant she had the wind, she had the rain. The rains were on the
Yeah,
island way before the hurricane hit. But it did pass further west of her, which was a good thing in terms of her parish. Um, but power was out when I spoke to her, and then I guess cell signal. I've not been able to get cell signal since
yeah.
last night. Um,
Oh, that's good.
but when we
Yeah,
last spoke,
Right.
she was things are okay, and she's settled in, and she has supplies, and the pets are okay.
yeah, that's good. No, I have some friends that live there, and I was just thinking because what's so crazy with the whole weather thing. I was in South Florida for the past like couple years, so hurricane season was always like one of the weirdest things. Like my first year, it rained like 2 3 months in a row, and then the next year we didn't get like any rain at all. It was so weird.
Mm,
It was like all the hurricanes and storms were like hitting Tampa, and they would just miss deep South Florida. Like I was in Hollywood, which is like in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami,
yeah.
Fort
and
Lickerdale. This is what
it
Navy
was
sailors call it.
oh, that's funny.
Fort-
No, yeah, but it's I know how crazy the weather is because it they always report it right when it's like category 5 and all that stuff. And I know this one when it hit Jamaica, I think it was category
It hit
5.
at 5. It's the
Yeah,
strongest hurricane to hit the island since records
Hmm.
began.
yeah,
Well, and Paul makes a great point. If we didn't think that women and weather were both bipolar, why did we name it Melissa? All I'm saying is Paul said it was called Melissa. I didn't name the hurricane. I didn't name the hurricane a woman. But Paul, I guess because you're in the midst of it, it's hard for you to see, but you kind of are talking about like all these hurricanes are missing us. But you have to remember what Steve and I see that maybe you don't see is you're sitting there with the sleeves off. The hurricane probably took a detour. He said, I don't want to go over there. I don't want to mess with that guy. You know, if I was a hurricane and I saw you sitting on the porch with the the sleeves off and it's only like 50 degrees out, cold for us
Take
other
a
people,
detour.
I would have taken a yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot, I would have turned around and gone back.
Stay but
yeah,
it's been strange. I mean, it's been great to have the the awareness and the concern.
Mm.
Um, it's kind of bittersweet though. It's sad that you know the people flew to the island to
Mm.
experience a Category 5. News teams were out there
Mhm.
Talking about like
reporting.
storm chasers.
As I guess it's that storm chaser. That's that
Yeah,
storm chaser thing, whereby you show up there for the new. It's newsworthy, therefore you go there,
yeah,
and then I guess you move on to the next.
yeah,
It's hitting Cuba now at a Category 3.
yeah,
Not to take anything away from it because it's just as devastating and populous being what it is. It's hitting, it's impacting them just as much. In many ways, there's going to be loss of life. There's going to be major infrastructure damage
yeah,
to countries that are already trying to balance and budget
yeah,
to exist. A hurricane sweeps by you, and sort of all bets are off type thing.
yeah.
But the
It
news moves on. And I got to say this out. I got to say this out publicly because I spent 3 months in Jamaica in 22. So I listened to a lot of the news, and I was involved in. I wasn't visiting. I wasn't tourist. I wasn't a tourist in Jamaica. I was living there,
mm,
and the whole premise of global warming and the fact that it impacts places that
mhm,
aren't contributing to climate change.
yeah,
And going to GOP and asking, hey, could you put some, the polluters
mhm,
ought to put something aside to compensate for the
Yeah.
impact that they're causing in other places. It's
Yeah.
like taking your trash. It's like taking your trash to another country
Yeah.
and like saying, "Well, it's not in my backyard, therefore it's not my problem."
Right.
Um, and we're seeing this now, and the water was 87 between 85 and 89 degrees Fahrenheit. The
Wow.
Caribbean Ocean or Caribbean Sea. It's never been that warm. This time of the year.
Yeah. You know, like, and Steve, like, I know we talk about like you don't want to get like political and stuff, but like
Mm,
global warming was the one that was like the one issue that I never understood how it was like a political thing, because I was born and raised in Hawaii where like we never experienced, people always used to laugh, and I mean I guess they still kind of do to an extent if you tell them like it kind of is a bit seasonal now, just because like when when it was summertime, I don't ever remember it getting to like 90. There were times where it was hitting like triple digits. Like it would hit like
yeah,
100 degrees there. And I would always just tell people like there has to be a reason for this. Like it wasn't like this way for so long.
yeah,
And it was the same thing like during winter time. Like anything in the 60s in Hawaii is considered like cold. When I left the last year, there were a few times where it was hitting like 58, 56, and people were like, "Whoa, it's never been that cold before." And it's like
mm,
there is an explanation, you know, for it. But I think what it is, you know, the news is very infamous for like kind of trying to shape and frame things in the way of like public perception, right? Where
yeah,
they don't want them to really be aware of a lot of stuff going on. So it's just kind of like, oh, you know, this thing, and it becomes so controversial. But like when you look at how things were, you know, 5, 10, 20 years ago, whatever it is, and you
yeah,
can see like a change, there has to be a point where people are like, oh darn, it never ever got cold here, or it never like snowed. I think it snowed in central Florida this year,
wow,
and they were like, it was the first time that it snowed in like I forget what it was, like 50, 60 years. It was like a long time, and people
yeah,
were like, whoa. um and everybody just thinks that it's, oh, it's some, you know, like coincidence, random thing. It's like, no, there's a reason why these things are happening. And there was a book that I was reading. I'm almost done with it, called From Ideas to Impact, and it talks about how to implement change in a divided world. And what you had just brought up with some of these developing nations is one of the things that one of the prime ministers, I can't remember if it was, I know it was one of the small Caribbean islands, I believe, or it could have
hmm,
been like South America, but they were talking about how this is why a lot of these nations aren't able to get ahead, is like they have a hard time, you know, getting by as is. And then they have a lot of these natural disasters more than like other places
yeah,
because of what's happening, and they're not even, you know, doing anything to it yet. They have to like take money that they really don't even have, or take more money, and it just sets them like further and further behind. So I think they started passing things where in certain places where they're getting hit a lot by like hurricanes or tropical storms and all this stuff, and it's doing a lot of damage, they
hmm,
can delay like
payments,
paying back. Yeah, and not only that, but even there's like a certain amount of money that even like the big nations like the US and, you know, all these other big nations that can, you know, give these smaller countries money, where they have to like allocate for stuff like that. So I think it's good, you know. And the interesting thing when a lot of this happens, kind of like you said, is that, and I learned this from my time in Nicaragua, is like everybody has this like perception, you know, of like what it is. Like you can kind of like think that you know what it is, but when you actually like go there and you
mm,
see like how people live and how it actually like impacts them and how it affects like daily living, it just changes your perspective
yeah.
on things.
It's like, it's like we said a couple of weeks ago. I think we talked about the map. The map is not the territory,
Yeah.
and and this journey is so this even just the journey of climate and this
Yeah.
particular instance of this hurricane. is so indicative of that statement. The map is not the journey. You
Yeah.
can look at all of the diagrams and projections and AIs in computing predicament predictions of where this path is going to happen. And you can even see it hour by hour. I was watching it hour by hour. This thing it took such a weird path.
Yeah.
Actually, let me bring up let me see if I can add I've got an image of it, which was really just strange. It obviously, I prayed a lot as
Yeah.
as as I as I would in that situation. And so you can see, I've got it on the screen here. You can see
Oh
it.
wow. Yeah.
And it took this weird path. With I marked in the dot. The Brownstown is the town where my mum lives.
Oh, okay.
So shout out to St. Anne and Brownstown, and God bless you and all my
Oh, it
family
looks
and
like
friends there.
it looks like it just missed kind of.
It went around Montego Bay,
Yeah, it went
although
around.
St. James the parish got hit. I marked it in red where when I was looking at it, its trajectory was on this path, so it would have gone almost through St. Anne.
Oh wow.
And then it turned north, and I thought, amen, it may actually go. If it went west, it could actually go around the island.
Yeah.
And then it turned back northeast sharply, and I thought, it's back on track to hit Brownstown. That's that red path. I put it in there.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah. So now I'm like praying hard now that this thing. I'm not saying my prayers moved it. I'm just saying that you look at something and all you can do is pray
Yeah.
for the best.
And
Prepare for the worst.
it worked out.
And then I guess it got close to land, and maybe the topography or the dynamics of it started to follow the coastline a little bit, and then it got pushed north again, and it joined further along in a different parish further along, and then sort of skirted its way. And then fortunately, it actually took it's a narrower part of the island.
Oh wow.
In a sense, if it had gone through the middle, it would have gone through more of the island.
Wow. Yeah, that's really
So
interesting.
yeah, so it took this weird path, so yeah, it was just I don't know, it's just blessings all around in terms
Yeah.
of, I mean, not to mitigate the people we don't know the loss of life. I think there's three. I heard reports of three before it had landed, or by the time it had landed, and there's still emergency services can't get to everywhere.
Yeah.
But then the other point is to what you're saying about interesting. You said that people confound politics and climate, which I think is a tough one. There's other things that have got more immediate agency. Climate takes decades of study to work out what's going on, to see the trend. It takes generations. But political whims and ideas in the States, it's 8 years max, right? You can go in for 2 terms consecutive.
Yeah.
And if you've got a political feeling or aspect, you work it within a much shorter timeline that the world is getting warmer. So yeah,
it's just kind of, to me, like, I just think about it as it's almost kind of like people don't utilize the resources that we have for the right things, because it's like that to me is where all the data and all that stuff comes in. Because in a lot of instances, like when it comes to like humans and stuff, I think data can be misleading. But when you look at things like the weather and a lot of these different things, you can't really ever like predict the weather because it's so like unpredictable and it changes. But it's kind of like people, right? Like you can look at like patterns. You can see like, okay, in this area, like in the past, like these storms have done this. So you can kind of like prepare better, I guess. And I think that seems to be one of the main things that has always impressed me with a lot of these like developing nations, is like the fact that they don't have the resources, and they may not have the money and as like the quality and stuff that we have. They're so prepared, like they have things, they know a lot of people are just so prepared, and I'm just like, in Hawaii, it was really interesting where it's almost kind of like people didn't take it seriously, you know, because it was just, I was very fortunate where I lived in Hawaii. Like our area was like the perfect spot because we had like this huge hill, and not only that, but we had this huge river behind our house. So it's like for any storm to ever touch our house, it would have to go through this like huge hill. It'd have to fill up like the river. There were a lot of kind of like barriers, but it
Mm.
used to just be so interesting how a lot of people just didn't take it seriously, you know, and it's just, you never know what's going to happen. That was kind of a big difference when I moved to Florida, was like they take I haven't ever seen like a hurricane or tornado up close yet, but they take a lot of stuff like really seriously, and the preparation, it's almost kind of like they're prepared before, whereas like in Hawaii it was so last minute. Like as soon as
Yeah.
the news announces that there's a storm, then everybody's running to the store. Everybody's buying, you know, water and all that type of stuff. And I just think that a lot of times people don't use the resources that we have for the right reasons. And I mean, you can apply that kind of across the board. Like with the whole social media thing, it was really built to kind of like connect the world. You know, it kind of changed when advertising got introduced. And I watched this documentary where they were talking about how the way that social media is utilized now is not the way that, you know, it was intended.
Attended. Yeah.
And I think that's just that's kind of an idea and a message that goes across the board for a lot of things. You know,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, and sort of bringing the arc of this discussion around to what Mr. Whiskey was sharing as he came on with regards to our 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 perception of self dependence, or you know, our independence from substances or environments that we find ourselves being caught up on. It's interesting because like we just said there, Paul, about, you know, Florida. There's one news article about a storm on the horizon, and everyone's down at Home Depot getting plywood and boarding up stuff. And Jamaica, as much as they knew it was coming, and as big as it was, um, they don't have the same sort. I don't feel they have the same sort of mindset that says, you know, I've got to get all the. I don't have the resources. Sometimes people don't have the resources to actually board up. If you're in a poorly built house with a zinc roof, you know, the slightest wind will lift that thing off. I mean, roofs and buildings, you know, got torn up. And if you didn't build well, it's hard to prepare your house for something like that, for one.
yeah,
And then I think there's a resilience, and you might see it in the islands in Hawaii. You know, there seems to be a resilience and a connection with nature.
yeah,
I feel like a first world developed country that has a natural disaster catastrophe will use first world resources and mindset to deal with it. They'll go to
yeah,
the store, they'll buy the equipment, they'll learn how to drill and do things, right? That's
mhm,
second and third world lean into the fact that climate, you know, a lot of people turn to God. I mean, all the threads around watching this hurricane unfold
mm,
um, weren't about you should have done this or you should have drilled that down. It was, you know, thoughts and prayers and understanding that there's things bigger than us, for one,
yeah,
and you
Mhm.
can't necessarily prepare for it. And tying into Mr. Whiskey's thing, dependence on the right thing. There's something, you know, we want to be self-sovereign.
yeah,
We feel that we're our own sovereign. And in actual fact, there's something bigger than us that we have to defer
yeah.
to.
I
Um,
think, you know, like Steve, this reminds me a lot of the conversation that we kind of tied up on at the end. You know, this idea of not really about like control, but like surrendering
mm,
to your own power and kind of like control the controllables type of thing. To to your point, I will say, like, people who live on like islands and are more kind of like laid back and, you know, relaxed type of thing. I do remember it kind of just being this thing of the relationship with nature, but also just understanding that like that's completely out of your control. Like, you
Mm,
can prepare the best that you can, but at the end of the day, like, you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna control this storm, so it's like gonna, you know, go this way or do that. I think like one of the big problems with a lot of the, you know, kind of like first world countries and nations is that they're so used to having this like tech thing that basically allows us to control everything, right? And that's nature's kind of the one thing that you can't really control, but people aren't used to that. So it's
mm,
kind of like it's a different, it's just kind of like a different world. I remember like before I came to visit, and even before then, like my aunt would kind of like prepare me and tell me all these things about, oh, you know, it's so different. Like we don't have this, you know, this, and there are all these different things, and you you can do your research and prep and do all these things, but when you're actually there in that environment, it's just completely different. You
mm.
know, it's like you can't kind of anticipate what you're going to experience. You kind of have to just do it, and then you understand later. I always think about this saying of life and school are like completely different, because in school, like, you know when the test is coming and you can prepare, you can study, like, you know, all these things. With life, you're kind of like playing, I would joke and say like you're playing roulette. Like if you survive the lesson, then, or if you survive the obstacle, you get the lesson later type of thing. So I think that's kind of what it is that you just can't control the weather. And
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I remember I was sharing an example of boot camp. Like you can watch all the videos on YouTube, talk to
Mm,
veterans, but when you
yeah.
actually live it, it's so different. And I think, Steve, to your point about the allotments of money, I think one of the issues with that is that we can't just scan the hurricane in Jamaica and say this is from the US's pollution or from
Yeah.
Britain's pollution or
Yes.
China,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
that means is essentially no, based off the, you know, the way society is set up, unfortunately, no country is just going to step up and be like, I will take accountability for this and send money. It would be like, I'll do it if every other nation in the
Yeah.
UN does it, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things though where I do agree with it to the point that I've seen how much money the US government wastes on other things. And I feel like this is actually something important where I would be fine with our funds helping supply that, because the US does contribute to pollution. And so do a lot of countries. And I think that in that case, that money could be used for not just rebuilding, but getting more hurricane proof buildings so that you don't have to keep rebuilding. I'd rather spend
Right.
more money one time building everything to be resistant than just continually rebuilding. That
Yeah.
costs a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah.
As far as you mentioned like covering the storm afterward, I do agree that a lot of places is kind of like one and done, once out of sight, out of mind. But I will
Mm.
say one thing New Jersey did was like after Hurricane Sandy, every single day they had day 2 since Hurricane Sandy, day 3, and
Oh,
they were covering because it just destroyed so
yeah.
much. I mean, people were finding property that they own months
Mm,
Yeah.
later. And I think it is important to have that coverage afterward too. But like you said, it's a lot of in the present. And then as
Yeah.
far as energy and politics, one thing I thought about is working in a nuclear field really opened my mind to a lot of myths about nuclear power and how it can be utilized. And I do think one of the issues is that nuclear power is one of those things where people will just focus on the disaster, because when you do have
yeah.
a disaster, it's pretty
It's
big.
big.
You
Yeah.
know, I probably know about more disasters than the average person just because I've had to read them and be taught them and stuff. And
Mm.
you know, it is pretty bad, but it's one of those things too where it's like it can be great. You just gotta set it up to be that way. And looking at like there's literally like a book this big of every incident that's ever happened in nuclear industry and what it changed and why. And
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting concept to look further into it. But society still has this like idea And
Yeah.
it's also because nuclear power and nuclear devastation have been just like put synonymously
Yes.
when they're not, right?
Yeah.
So when people think of nuclear power, they think of the, like these Fallout video game series, nuclear war and stuff. And like even
Mm.
like when I tell people I'm a nuclear operator formerly, like a lot of people think that means that I blow countries up. Like a lot of people think that I operate nuclear weapons rather than equipment meant to sustain nuclear power in a safe manner.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people just think nuke, they just think of
Yeah.
typically the devastation of,
Yeah.
of Japan or Chernobyl,
Mm.
but it's a lot of people aren't educated on Chernobyl, the difference between those reactors in other countries and how they
Yes.
operate. And actually, see, I got to ask you, does Britain have any nuclear power plants or
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah. We have nuclear power in as part of
Okay,
our energy
interesting.
Yeah.
portfolio. And your point is really that's really useful. I mean, the thing that comes back from that is what Paul said about how we've confounded a climate issue with political issues or
Mhm.
politicization of the climate. The climate doesn't belong to anybody. And to your point, Mr. Whiskey, yeah, no natural disaster comes with with a stamp saying this is where it came from, made in the US, made in China, made in Russia, right? And even if it did, I mean, those countries would spend inordinate amounts of money to
Cover.
not, yeah, to cover that fact that it came from that place, or take the label off if they had to.
Yeah.
And the irony is that there is a lot of the power and influence and money in the world are held by fewer and fewer people
Mhm.
Mm.
that have no
Yeah.
sort of understanding, or maybe conception of how small the world has become,
Mm.
and how interconnected the world has become. It's so
Yeah.
interconnected. I mean, not I'm sorry, I'm knocking him, I guess. Bezos flies out to the out to space to look at the world, and then comes back with some epiphany. But I don't know how do you
Mm.
manifest that in understanding the plight of other parts of the world that
Yeah.
are often directly related to you, because the world is so small that Amazon's footprint affects a lot of the world.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I have to disagree on the sentiment that yes, the world's getting smaller and smaller and more interconnected, but at the same exact time, social media is detaching humanitarian aspects. So you have young generations who are growing up watching these gore videos, as we've discussed before.
Mm,
They're all the content is sexualized, all the content is gore, everything's a meme or a joke. So people are detached. So when people
mm,
in America see people in Jamaica suffering, what's going to end up happening is someone's going to make some person who slips and fall because of rainwater in Jamaica is going to end up in a funny fails 2025 video, and people are
mm,
going to be detached. And so I think the issue is like climate is like the whole world, but when it's mainly affecting parts of the world that the polluters don't live in, it's like out of sight, out of mind.
yeah.
Again, it's like I think the issue is detachment. I feel like a lot of the younger generations are detached from death. They don't respect funerals. They don't respect marriage. They don't respect when people are actually being killed or injured. It's become like a laughing stock. And so people see natural disasters, they kind of couldn't care less, just as long as it's not me. And like you said,
Mm,
when you have people being affected by it, it changes everything. Just like I know plenty of people who are like they're not against drugs or alcohol, and then someone in their family passes away from addiction, suddenly they're against that stuff. And it's like
mm,
you should stand against something because it's wrong, not just because you've been personally affected. And that's not
yeah.
to diminish anyone who had an awakening because of a personal effect, but it's like you should feel personally affected to begin with,
Mm,
especially when it's just because it's another nation doesn't mean it's not your problem. And I think as far as the politicization of the climate, I think it's not necessarily about the climate itself. It's about the industries that are contributing to the pollution are typically driven by politics. It's more about I want to say capitalism and stuff. Green energy, like you said, it's
mm,
become a political issue rather
yeah.
than it because it's all about economy rather than the energy output, input, and then the climate. I
Mm.
think green energy is also really misunderstood as well. Like and I think there are so many innovative technologies that are coming out for green energy that just don't go mainstream at all. Different kinetic energy devices based on water flow and different stuff. And
Mm.
like it's also trial and error. So like I was definitely against they had installed some like water and wind turbines off the coast of New Jersey, and all dead whales washed up on the beach. They were being killed by them. But I also don't think that doesn't mean we should never try something again. I think we need to implement it differently to prevent that from happening. Same thing with nuclear side. We definitely don't want another Chernobyl or anything like that.
Mm.
But I feel like learning from something and then just continually living in fear of it are two very different things. I
Yeah.
think we should learn from it and set
Yeah.
it up to be much safer. And it's like, oh, it's too much money to build a really contained nuclear power plant so that if anything happens, it won't spread anywhere. But then meanwhile, you're sending millions of dollars or even billions of American dollars into honestly just blatant nonsense sometimes. It's like, I'd rather you just build the completely safe nuclear plant, and then it's so short term. I think part of what
Yeah.
you mentioned, the 8-year cycle, that's part of the issue. Presidents aren't looking at how do I build a nuclear power plant that 20 years from now is still safe and powering people. Well, I won't be president by then. I'll be dead. I think the issue is the short-sightedness. We're looking
Yeah.
at things not generationally. And
No.
I've had plenty of people who like, well, it's just the next generation's problem. Who cares? Like I've heard people say my grandkids can deal with it. And it's like,
Wow.
but you think about all the issues we're dealing with because our grandparents said let the grandkids deal with it. It's like,
With
do
it.
you really want that for your children? But I've
Yeah.
I've met leaders even who say, if you don't have it worse than me, I couldn't care less, or you have it better than me in XYZ way. So I don't care about ABC way. So I think it all comes down to self-centeredness. It's all about just the short-term gain rather
Yeah.
than the global sustainment. And like I said, it is just about that detachment. I think social media is good because like now I have a more personal connection to Jamaica through you than
Mhm.
I would have had if I just grew up in the US with no phone. But I think on the other hand, you have all this inundation of detachment. And like I
Yes.
said, I think it's just getting worse and worse. And I think the fact that I don't believe in complete censorship. But like, here's the issue: if you censor anything that's gore related, it's like now you've taken away freedom of content. You're censoring anything that's gore. But I think it's about the way it's being showed. Like if gore is being shown to emphasize a medical point or a humanitarian point, I think that's good. But if gore is being utilized just as pure humor, everyday humor,
Yeah.
I think that comes to a point of desensitization.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a tricky subject. With anything online, it's a tricky subject because it's the balance of freedom and censorship.
Yeah.
Even with the
Yeah.
sexual content, I don't approve of it, but people will say you're censoring. So
Mm.
it's a difficult balance.
Yeah.
I think like, oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was going to say it's because it's interesting because it's the you don't want to take away someone's agency to choose.
Mm.
At the same time, me putting a water cooler event a link on a social media platform is not driven by millions or tens of thousands of dollars of psychometric research to make sure that I hit the optimum number of people and trigger them in a particular way.
Yeah.
Unlike large organizations that say, if we're going to have a footprint on this space, we're going to control the narrative by how we present ourselves.
Yeah.
And we know that under the umbrella of free speech, we can send a message that will actually trigger people,
Yeah.
fire off dopamine, fire off fear of FOMO, whatever it is. We've got researchers, we've got psychologists on board that will help us deliver that message in such a way that it won't be censored through the media, but once it hits the audience, we've got them.
Yeah.
And that's where we get in the thing whereby I agree. We had cigarette packets that had, before it just said surgeon's warning, this could be harmful to your health. And then I never smoked, but I always saw friends had cigarette packets, and it had a little blurb, surgeon's warning. And then nowadays the packet's got a full color picture of someone's lung or some sort of defect that it says smoking kills. I mean, it literally says smoking kills.
But only for smoking. Ironically, I've done episodes on marketing addictive products. Smoking, we did the full 180, right? You used to smoke on airplanes, now you can't. But drinking and weed and caffeine and everything else, sugar, they're all marketed, and like you have the don't drink and drive, and maybe, but you don't have these, like you still have ads putting it forward. Like you don't have ads encouraging smoking anymore. It's just ads to quit smoking. But you still have ads to promote drinking, to promote all this other stuff. And it's just mind blowing that, like, I had a sugar addiction guy on the show talking about like the difference between real sugar and the sugar that is being put into food in America. And he said he believes that eventually it will be like smoking, where our kids are going to ask me, like, Mr. Whiskey, you're saying you had vending machines in this school you went to, and they had like Pop-Tarts and M&Ms and stuff in it? Like you were allowed to buy that in the vending machines at school? The same way I asked my parents, I said, you were smoking in a lounge with the teachers? But to your point, we've done so much to display the dangers of smoking, but alcohol and weed is still mainstream media and music and movies put forward. It's not a party until you're having that. Why is there no alcohol ads saying like this can cause liver failure, fatty liver, organ failure, like all these things? Like there is no liver picture on alcohol as far as I've ever seen. Like what if we had a picture of like a disgusting liver? We've got pictures of miners' lungs and smokers' lungs together, like you said. So I think it's interesting. If smoking made more money, would they then start to advertise that it's fun again, like alcohol? Like why? I guess I don't understand the mentality behind the pick and choose. Was it just because alcohol is a bigger industry? Why smoking, not drinking?
Well, that's another.
I know you don't have the answer, Steve. It's all right.
That's another. It's interesting in terms of just messaging and our own agency, and then also trusting that we would. We don't have. There's fewer resources for us to be discerning.
Yeah,
I think that's where I'm coming from. Is that it's a lot on our plate individually to be discerning in a world where we're inundated with messages. And we're inundated with messages that now become very much confounded with reality and just being created out of someone's mind. And that now becomes, it's hard work to be discerning. And as people, we don't like hard work. Our brains don't like hard work. We generalize, we distort, we delete by design, because that's less work when we do those things in our mind. Right? So when you're in a space where you've got thousands of messages coming at you per minute, you have to go through those areas of generalizing, deleting, or distorting, distortion, generalization, or deletion, just to get by. And it takes its toll. And to your point, Mr. Whiskey, I mean, we have to do it. It's an agency that we have to have, and when people can, that's why I love this format. Right, as just three of us here, someone's watching. It's great. I mean, people watch on replay or whatever.
Just a couple of dudes.
Just a couple of dudes, couple of nukes. The thing is, though, the point is that we always touch on something that I think is really poignant. Either for us, I feel it when we talk, and I hope people who listen in or connect with us through other mediums can say, "Oh, you know what? You talked about this on that show," or I heard you talk this. Because discernment is really, that's the threat. Our attention and our ability to discern are really the things that are a threat.
Well, I think for me, I kind of see it differently. Like, I think the problem is that there's a lot of kind of like ulterior motives to a lot of things. And I was kind of just thinking about this, Steve, as you were talking about discernment. But when I look at discernment, like, they focus so much on like what's being said. But really, I feel like for me in conversations, like, I'm focusing on kind of like what's not being said. And I think like that's kind of that's I mean that's kind of like because so like we'll just
Paul's
use it.
first dates are clean. I mean, he's not calling you back if he knows what's up.
I mean, we'll kind of just use this as an example, right? Like, you look at the fact that a lot of people treat death with like humor as kind of like a bad thing, but
Mhm.
what happens more often than not, and if you actually talk to a lot of comedians, like, they won't like tell you this while they're on stage, but if you have private conversations with them, they'll tell you that like comedy and humor is kind of like their way of asking people, for like help. Like, they're not in a good space. They're trying to like cope and like process things. And I think like so many times people take things so literally, and that's where the
Mhm.
whole question thing of like, oh, I'm curious, like, why do you think that way? Like,
Mm.
how do you feel that way?
Mhm.
And it's like, it kind of gets people to open up more, and you can kind of like, very rarely are you ever going to get somebody that comes out and say like, I'm like not doing great, or this is what's going on, but like, you can kind of tell more. And I think, to your point too, it's taking away a lot of the um they're taking away like free will and agency through collective manipulation. That's why like one of my big things last year was like always asking myself like, what do you think? Because so often like you're in these communities and groups or whatever it is, and everybody feels one way and you really don't, but like you kind of feel not like pressured, but you're kind of just like, oh well, I'm the only one, right? So my whole thing was, I mean, I used to joke, I'm an outlier in a group of outliers. And it's funny because we've been playing pickleball, and now like I think I was telling you guys, like, my uncle and my
We
cousin's
see the
brother, like,
proof. We see it. We see the pickleball arms.
my uncle and my cousin's brother got into it, and now they're like buying outfits, buying new shoes, buying like paddles and all these different things. And they're asking me like, I needed new shoes anyway, so I'm gonna get new shoes, but like I'm not buying new paddles, new outfits. I think like there's something to be said about being willing to kind of like be one of one. And I think for me that's probably one of the reasons why I look at things so differently. Is I've been in professional environments like all my life since I was 16, where like I was one of one, and I had to kind of like be the representation that I wanted to see. I think so, to your point, Steve, right? Like the convenience generates like a lot of comfort, and in return like you can't have growth when you're in the comfort zone. So it's kind
Mm.
of like people get so caught up in these ruts, and that's why I think like systems and habits like can be a bad thing if they're like the same things over and over again. It's all about like,
Mhm.
what is that kind of ulterior motive as to like why you're doing it, right? Like,
Mm.
one of my things is the scrolls. I think Steve and I've talked about this.
Mm.
Like, I wrote two of my own, and it's something that I've done for the past like 3 years, where I go back and I do the scrolls like 30 days. And the reason why I do it is it's so interesting how, because people always say, right, like with your career and stuff, like, oh, you're going to do the same thing for X amount of years and it's going to be so boring. But what I love about the scrolls is that every day is like so different. And, I may have good days, I may have bad days. And no matter how many times I read that scroll 3 times a day for 30 days, every time there's a different part of that scroll that like kind of stands out to me. And
That
I think
lands, yeah.
it really kind of keeps me sharp with the awareness thing, but also like rewiring the that subconscious part, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of people don't realize, but they're not like actually conscious. You're not actually like thinking. You may be like there like physically or whatever, but are you actually there, and are you present um
It's what you're not
mentally?
saying. It's like you say.
Right.
It's like
Exactly. Yeah.
What did Whiskey had something to say when you just before you started? I wanted to catch him before he lost that train of thought.
Well, it's probably already gone, but I was gonna say, Paul, new podcast idea, the One of One podcast, not to be
The one of
mistaken,
one.
the One to One podcast. But Paul, what I did want to say is to clarify on my end, I think there's a difference between an individualized comedian or person expressing that kind of humor compared to just mass meme production online. You know, I think there's like there are people who just thrive off of people who enjoy that type of content and they're not asking them for help. Now, to your point, having worked in the military and integrated comedy into unprofessional therapy on my that I gave out to people at the smoke pit, a lot of the military, like I guessed on shows talking about how dark humor is a crucial part of
Yeah.
military emotional expression. I think that's different than these random people online with anime girl profile picture who just mass produce memes of this content to take advantage of people's feelings. And I remember my thoughts, Steve. Thank you.
Mhm.
One thing I was going to say is about discernment. I saw an article recently. I got to look into it. I think it said that China is now requiring influencers to have completed university education in whatever they're trying to influence in. Now, some people might say that's censorship, which I get that argument. But on the other hand, you know, I've had conversations on my podcast talking about like if you're navigating fitness advice online, be careful. If you're navigating finance advice, be careful because it could be anyone who throws on a cowboy hat and a dad culo shirt giving you advice, and he has no educational background in finances at all. You know, but so I don't know. It's like influencers. One of the things about it, one of beauty was like podcasting. It was independent, self-sovereign, right? No one could censor you really. You make your content. Now, if the country is dictating you need a degree for it, it takes that away. But at the same time, I see the combat side of the fake news, misinformation, wrong information. But one thing I did see was I was at the gym, you know, because I'm behind on my gains, and they were interviewing, I guess, some psychologists who work for TikTok and get paid to make the app more addicting and to make people like their literal job is how do we keep people on this app for longer? And some of them were talking about their moral conflictions and maybe leaving the company because they said we we do our job well, but at the end of the day, we've begun to have a moral compromise with it because we see how long we're keeping these kids on the app. I mean, and
Yeah.
they are kids and adults too, of course.
Yeah.
But you know, Steve, like you said, that like there are actual psychologists working to keep us on it, and that goes back to the point of Paul's point of the intentions behind it, you know, the ulterior motives behind it. Again,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why we don't blatantly display the negative effects of drinking and weed and other substances the same way as smoking because it's a I couldn't tell you the number on that industry. Alcohol is probably one of the biggest industries in the whole world. It has been for a long time,
The cannabis industry is huge too. Like it makes
and that's only
billions.
growing more and more.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. What I did want to announce to everyone though is that I head out for my cruise this weekend. The Podcasters Cruise, now rebranded to the New Media Cruise, and I will be performing comedy. 3 minutes is all I'm allotted, unfortunately, but I will be
Get it
performing
recorded.
comedy. Yeah, I am going to record it, and then the plan is the following Wednesday. Hop on here, and you could screen share it or something like that, and you guys could give me live feedback or lack thereof.
Well, you'll definitely get feedback. You put it on this.
I'm very excited for it. You know, like I said, I was supposed to perform once a month from last year when I performed in the cruise to now. I performed 0 times. So we're going to see how it goes, but I am a lot more confident about this. This one, you know, like usually I just make it up on the spot when I'm on stage. This one I did a little bit of some pre-thinking and trying to really the pre-thinking is to help me with the pace. So the biggest thing I've struggled with, which anyone performing comedy for the first time on a limb, you talk too fast, you don't give pauses for the laughter. So that's what I'm trying to be conscious of. And that's why I've always envied these guys and gals who have like a 15-minute or a 30-minute show. They are able to take their time and really cultivate stories. With me, I got 3 minutes You know,
Yeah.
I've got the watch right here. I'm like, this is too much now. You
Yeah.
know, this is like blink of
It's
an eye.
it's an ocean of time for a story to land. I won't say a good story, for a story to land. You've got plenty of time
Yep.
for a story to land and for it to be impactful. We don't pause, even on this platform, we don't pause more than 3 or 4 seconds before someone speaks. We've got something, and as soon as that gap opens, we're in. We don't have a
Yep.
3 second
Yeah.
pause here. So you've got 3 minutes of your own time to tell your own story in your own
Yep.
way. It's a lot. It's a lot more. Think of it. I mean,
Gates'
from
law. I overestimate what I could do in 30 minutes and underestimate what I can do in 3 minutes.
3 minutes
If you want to know
exactly.
more about Gates' law and I think Parkinson's law, check out the episode with Steve Wright on the Couple of Nukes podcast. Periodization, breaking free of the calendar. Society wants you trapped in goal-setting timelines that they set, not your own.
See,
Shout out
you've just
Adina Wright
reeled
Design.
that. You just reeled that up. I'm looking forward to your show. We've reached the hour mark, and I want to be respectful of time. And I just wanted to share. I wanted you to share a little bit, Mr. Whiskey, about your recent post with the
Oh, thank
Warriors
you.
of Hope, because I saw that, and you were a
Yeah.
thorn amongst all those roses. So I just wanted you to share.
I have gotten a lot of grief for being the only man at a Latina convention. I understand. My friends won't stop giving me a hard time, but honestly, like, it was so impactful because each author went up, and the whole event is recorded on my YouTube now, and each author went up and read a little bit of their chapter just to, give a little sample. And hearing these stories, I would have never expected it, and I did a solo episode recently covering the event and my thoughts and reflections on it. And the thing I said was, I think we have such a shallow sight of what domestic violence is. We're like, when the average person hears domestic violence, they think a partner beating another partner. The amount of stuff it goes beyond, deeper into, like, no, this is a partner in some cases, not all, beating a partner and then forcing her to wipe the blood off the floor, and telling her to go faster or he's going to beat her again. Like, the amount of emotional and psychological warfare that goes on. I've done episodes focused solely on gaslighting, narcissism, love bombing, all of that stuff, financial bondage. It was mind blowing. Like, women went up there, and cover your ears, anyone who doesn't like graphic stuff. And a woman was talking about her husband murdered their child. How, and another woman talked about being raped as a preschooler. Like, these were domestic violence and survivor and sexual assault stories that really caught me off guard. I think we don't really look into, me personally, because of my show, I've gotten into those kinds of stories before, but I think the average person lives a pretty blissfully ignorant life. And I don't say that as an insult, but I think going back to, like, Jamaica being hit by a hurricane, like, we are so detached. Like, we hear, okay, a hurricane's hitting, it's raining a lot, but you're talking about the roofs are being ripped off, people are dying, right? Like, we don't go that beyond that surface level of something bad is happening. Like, no, this is like, being raped as preschoolers, a woman's husband murdering her children. I mean, it's just stuff that left me speechless, and I was the host and I had to, follow it up with stuff. And I'm just like, I don't even know what to say because I am just in so much shock of how much evil there is in the world. But the beauty of it all that I mentioned was, almost every single one of those women, when they share their stories, were like, thank you, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Like, I've been through this bad stuff, but God is using me to inspire others and make an impact, and to see people who I felt like had more reason than anyone else to not believe,
Mm,
experiencing those stuff. The number one thing when I'm working with non-believers as a preacher is, how can God be real when there's so much evil in the world? Or this happened to me. Mr. Whiskey, like, I have a friend who asked me, Mr. Whiskey, I was raped continuously as a child by my brother. Why would God allow that? And those are big questions to ask just me. And it's so amazing to see people of faith through those hardships and living in life, getting remarried and not being afraid to get into a relationship again. A lot of them struggle with that. For me, one of the things that was most difficult to digest was, I work in women's pregnancy support, and I am continually upgrading my free guide on my website for women who are considering an abortion, what the resources are to not get one, because most abortions, over 75%, are financially driven. Most domestic violence is financial bondage. To your point, we've got people flying into space for leisure time, and women are killing their children and letting themselves get beat in relationships because they don't have the finances to get an education. A lot of them never worked because their partner did not allow them, or to drive and escape. They don't have a car or a place to go. And that reflection point is like, what can I do? Like this needs to be a societal movement, to your point. Like this should be a global issue. Like we have women killing their children because of money, yet we have people who fly in private jets. We have people who are just sports or entertainment people, and they're making millions. And it's like, yes, people are entitled to their money that they earn, and it's their choice for what to do with it. But I think we need to go back to the humanitarian. Yes, it's based in the Bible, but in general, using your money for good causes. And it's like, at what point is it like, yes, you earned all this money, but do you need $3 million to yourself? I that's just it. It was such a insightful and like hopeful event, but at the same time, it really weighed heavily on my heart.
Mm, mm. Thanks for sharing, because I saw the post and I thought I hope you join so I can catch you up on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is certainly, I think there's an opportunity in every generation to reflect on our humanity, our humanness. Our parents, certainly my parents went through. They were they're post-war babies, so they were on the tail end of the Second World War. But the world was a different place then, and people were still crying out for the humanity in the world. And it's something that we've always cried out for, even always, because that's who we are. Even before the Industrial Revolution and agricultural societies, and whether you're landowners or land workers or whatever, there's always been that dynamic. It's different now, obviously, we're in a different context, but the theme is the same. That we there's always been a cry to our humanness. The irony is that our structures have made it much easier to amass disproportionate wealth, and with that wealth make ill-informed choices. I think it's one thing if you lived in a village and the head of the village had the biggest hut and the most food parked outside. The villagers would see that, and there would be some friction, or there'd be some dynamic that may change that. Right now, you can amass that and hide it away. You can amass that and impact people from the other side of the world because of your policies, products, services, whatever it is. And they're not at your doorstep seeing what you have, unless you're Elon Musk and then you want to be a trillionaire, from a 500 billionaire to a trillionaire. And that doesn't make any, it was obnoxious to even hear the post that he wanted to do that, because I couldn't understand. And it's got to be a threshold at which you say, how much is too much? Or you sort of say, well, if one person can think that, then it's probably 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people thinking that. So you head up a major corporation, and someone's trying to get from $15 to $16 an hour. At the same time, you're pulling a bonus check of millions. So it just seems and it's not a political ideology. It's just, if you were in my space and it was disproportionately unequal in that way, I'd have to call you out. You'd have to sort of explain yourself to me at some point and say, hey, I worked for it. Fair play. But you know.
Yeah, I saw a recent article about a CEO. I guess he was making a million or something, and he actually redistributed his wealth so that every employee would make 70,000. And he saw the turnaround in morale and work productivity and stuff. And people told him, "You're not going to be able to sustain this. And what
Yeah,
about your money?" So it's like I said, amidst all this, there is hope, right? We do see some
yeah,
celebrities who give a lot of money to good causes, but to your point, it's like there's more chance for you to actually give now globally than ever before, and it's just ridiculous. You think about even the movie industry drives me insane. You think about there's probably over 50 streaming services now. And, I could list a whole list of them. And each one of them has original movies and TV shows coming out every day that had budgets that were some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
mm,
Some movies have budgets that are millions of dollars. And it's like I think of I'll just use MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. If they made one less Thor movie, they could have stopped, like veteran homelessness in America, or maybe 75,000 abortions. Like these are just fictitious numbers, but think about that. Think about like there are hundreds of new movies being made every day, each with a budget behind it of hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. And to think if a company made one less movie per day, they could literally shift the entire economy. And that's just crazy that we put more money into making sure that fake women and babies are generated on a screen than real women and babies are born. That's just how did we get to this point?
that,
You,
yeah,
you know?
if you can get that down to 3 minutes, that would be fair. That would be pretty
Yeah.
yeah, it's a sad irony. I don't know where your comedic 3 minutes are going to go, but I mean,
I'm gonna be
that.
talking about traveling, Japan, church experiences. It's gonna all tie together very
All
well.
right,
And there is a joke in there that Steve told me that I will be using. So in all the captions on my post, I am going to credit you. Don't tell anyone what it is. Keep it a secret.
okay,
But you said something once that was so hilarious, and I said I have to use that. It's one of the
okay.
best jokes I've ever heard in my life. So Steve,
As
I implore you to be join the comedic, area.
I will definitely. I appreciate comedy because of its, and I appreciate satire as well. And in that space, because it's a great way. It's a great pressure valve,
Yeah,
release valve for me. I mean, slapstick humor is funny too, but satire really does hit.
yeah.
Um,
Like four
and
bites of a cherry. One of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. But I will say, Steve, something that might make you chuckle. I'm part of like a Black entrepreneurs only business group, and they call me the White Chocolate CEO. And they're all like different. They're all different types of chocolates because it's a Black business company. But they brought me in as honorary Black member, and I'm the White Chocolate CEO. And they were gonna make me a T-shirt and stuff. So something you might enjoy to know about me. Yeah,
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm going to close out. I'll go around the room here. Final thoughts, Paul.
pickleball Paul.
Yeah, I think like honestly, the way that I kind of sum up this conversation is like as much as you kind of don't want to look at it this way, life really is kind of like a game, right? And a lot of different aspects, the game wasn't really ever built for you to win. And I think for a lot of people, they're trying to win a game playing by someone else's rules. It's so funny
Yeah,
because a lot of like school stuff that you learn doesn't really translate to life because we kind of talked about like school and life being the opposite. But the more that I hear this phrase of like keeping your eyes on your own paper, I think that that's like so profound. Um, when you're like looking at it from a life perspective of like focusing on your own, keeping your eyes on your own paper, because so everything that you talked about just now, Steve, about like money and people chasing stuff, like the problem with it is there is no such thing as enough because you're always gonna want more, right? And you see with like more money comes more power, and a lot of these people are on like these crazy fixes, and um there's just so much stress, and people wonder like why a lot of people who make so much money are so miserable. And then you realize that like less is actually more. And the way that we're kind of taught, at least in America, I can't speak to the UK because I haven't lived there for a long period of time, or Europe for that example, but it's this idea of like more and more and more. Oh, you need to work more. You need to like do this instead of like focusing on the right things.
The rat
right?
race, they call it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what really stood out for me. And just like one of my favorite things from this conversation was just the idea of like focusing on kind of like what I said. I mean, focusing on what's not being said, right? Like people are telling you things. There's always kind of like a message when people make those odd, facial expressions, or there's a delay when they're telling stories. Like pay attention to all that stuff. There's a reason like why people aren't just outright saying things. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, amen. I like that. The game not being built to win. Mr.
I agree
Whiskey.
with Paul. You might be on a first date and she might say she loves you, but her phone keeps going off and it's labeled boyfriend. And then she says it's okay, he's moving away in a month. But no, I had to disagree with Paul because I used a quadratic formula to make my breakfast this morning. So I think everything they taught me in school is perfect. But no, on a serious note, I like the keep your eyes on your own paper, because I would take it a step further and say if life is school, and you could try to cheat off someone's test and not realize that we're all taking different tests. It looks the same because it's a piece of paper and you're copying this person's answer and he's actually taking a math test and you're taking a Spanish test. You're going to fail, so to speak. But I think that's really accurate, because a lot of times you're trying to chase, and we've talked before about like chasing these highlights of other people's lives on social media, or thinking that their success is your success. Like there are certain influencers you put forward that you need to have a Bugatti instead of a minivan or whatever it may be, or whatever it is, whether it's a certain physical body appearance, certain types of clothing, certain types of family lifestyle. And I think, and even that has been politicized too, just like everything else, like certain types of homes or more politically one way than the other, certain types of family or clothing. But I think, just focus on what you want. And I think a lot of people don't know what they want, because we mentioned the subconscious programming, all the influences from apps. And it's so hard to find what you actually want. But I think social interaction is the biggest way. Like I grew up in a conforming, controlling, abusive household, and everything in my life was pre-programmed by my parents. And it was working a job as an ice cream salesman, walking up and down the beach of the Jersey Shore, where I actually met and interacted with so many individuals. And they kept asking the question, like, why are you working this job, saving money for college? I said, my parents want me to go to Coast Guard Academy. People start asking, what do you want? My parents never asked that. They said, you're going to do this. And when they start asking, what do you want? That got me thinking. But I think so many of us don't ever get asked that question, what do you want? Because we're just being told what we want.
Yeah.
So I think it's a hard question to ask yourself when you've always just been told. So my encouragement would be just get out and socialize, because I think human interaction shapes us. They say as iron sharpens iron, so one brother sharpens another, something like that. I think every single interaction you have, whether it's on the restream, join us next week, the link will be on Facebook, or it's just going out and having a coffee chat, I think it really changes us. I think we need to remember that we're amorphous, we're ever changing, and when we fall into a fixed shape that you talked about, comfort and routine, it stops your growth and it stops you from being able to see what you want.
Amen. Oh man, you guys touched on some powerful stuff there.
Steve, end us with a joke, Steve.
I don't have a dad.
I've got one for you if you need it.
Okay,
you should do a Halloween one.
I don't even. Oh no, I'll have to look. No, okay. I won't even bother. Right, I won't even go look it up. But
I got you.
Couple of things that just came up in there in terms of life being a game and not built to win. And it always reminds me of when I think of game and life, I think of Simon Sinek's talk around the game is designed to be played, not necessarily to be won. The excitement of a game is to keep playing it. So you may win and you may lose, and you don't want to play the game where you're always losing, and you don't want to play the game where you're always winning. It becomes boring. So understanding that concept, and then what you said, Mr. Whiskey, about eyes on our own paper, because you don't know what test someone else is taking. I've done that running when I've been training for a marathon, and I'm following a person who's doing a 5K. Different pace, different mindset, different.
You told us about that. I think you said the guy he was running home, not around the whole track.
And I've got miles to go, and he's just going home. So the understanding that your own paper is where it's at, and then the powerful question is, what do you want? And that's a question that we always have to ask ourselves. And the context changes. My week has been not derailed, but my week is different because of Melissa and because of the impact and where it lied and what it was doing. And I'm okay with that, because to your point, I'm amorphous. I can flex, I can mold. And if I was in a fixed mindset, it would be a derailment, because I'm just on that track. Sometimes life requires you to have grace on yourself and extend grace to others. So that for me is so important. And then the richness of you guys' conversation always inspires. Your life stories, you're young men, but it feels like you live multiple lives. You've gone through. You've got wisdom beyond your years.
I also shaved to match you. I'm trying to. I got rid of the sides, and I'm going to just the bottom. I'm gonna get what you have. But I think, Steve, you mentioned flex and flexibility, and I think on that note, Paul ought to give us a little gun show. Paul, come on, end us strong.
I'm good. No, I think
I want to see the pickleball arm. Show me the pickleball backhand arm.
The pickleball wiggle.
I will not be pressured, but it's no, I think like there's so much like with what you said, Stephen. Like, I think what's so important too that I would kind of want to add is, like, I don't think people realize that if you're like mentoring or teaching other people, the way that you phrase and position things is so important. Like, I'll always tell people, like, this is what worked for me. And I think so often, like, people don't share their experiences, and they should, on people, like, oh, because this worked for me, you should do this, or, you should do that. And I think, like, going back to this idea of keeping your eyes on your own paper, that's why it's hard for a lot of people, because they think that what worked for somebody else is going to work for them. And that was like one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, is that I was always around people who were like in their final chapter of life, because they were like in their 70s, 80s. And the advice and stuff that they would give me was always like, play it safe, do this or that. And it kind of took me a while to realize, like, oh, they're giving me advice through kind of like their lens from where they are. But when I always ask them, like, when you were in your 20s, like, oh, they were like, oh, no, it's completely different. So I think that's the big thing for a lot of people too, is that, like, take advice from people who kind of like either are where you are or they've done the thing that you're trying to do. Because so often people listen to people who have no, idea what they're talking about. And that's what gets people in a lot of trouble.
Give us the joke. Give us the joke. Give us the joke, Whiskey, and then we'll close. We'll close laughing. I hope we close laughing. I'll end the stream.
Paul was saying people too often listen to the wrong people, and I agree. They should be listening to the Couple of Nukes and One Thing podcast. Impossible equals possible. That's what they should be doing. But I don't know. The only joke I have, some people consider offensive.
I'm gonna give you big screen on this one. But
all right, two blondes walk into a building. You think one of them would have seen it? That's just the one I keep in my back pocket at all times.
Great switch up. On that note, Mr. Whiskey, I'm looking forward to the 3-minute stint.
Yeah.
It's
When
gonna
I come
go.
back, Steve, I'm gonna be as
Oh,
dark as you. I'm gonna be tanning.
oh.
Hopefully, so long as Melissa doesn't, ruin my cruise. Hope maybe a Melissa will ruin my cruise, but
A different kind of
you know
Melissa.
what I mean. Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much, bro. Keep up the pickle work.
Thank
and
you.
and
Bye, everyone.
thanks for watching, checking in. We are here every week. Your clocks go back in a couple of weeks, right? Or week end of the month.
I'm tired of conforming to society. I'm refusing to set mine back.
All right, I've set this time to 11:30 Eastern because my clocks went back, so it's 3:30. It was earlier for me this time, but I'm okay to keep this time as an Eastern time.
As long as you get your cup of tea for the day, right?
As long as I get my cup of tea for the day. But thank you so much, guys. And for those watching, catching a replay, we love you. Prayers continue to go out for speedy reparation and recovery for all of the Caribbean, not just Jamaica being hit, but also, we got Haiti's in a tough place, Cuba's in a tough place, Bermuda's on the map as well for this as well. So thoughts and prayers go out to those areas as well. But thank you, guys.
Paul, make sure you wave like this. Make sure you wave goodbye.
I'll wave.
Bye.
All right, take care, guys.